Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You, and All About You is broadcast here live every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And All About You is a show that's designed to give my guests a chance to give their life story. This morning on All About You, I have a very interesting, very successful business person in many different areas, and he's come down this morning to give his life story. My guest this morning on All About You is the owner of his own real estate company. He's a broker, appraiser, consultant, no other than Marc Gottesdiener. How you doing, Marc?
Good morning.
Okay, Marc, you were born and raised in New London, Connecticut?
Right. I was born at the hospital in New London, the Lawrence Memorial. Grew up my first 11 years in Waterford, across the street from the Ocean Beach, and at age 11, moved to New London.
What was it like growing up in those two particular areas of Connecticut?
Well, I grew up by the water, so I have a love for the water and the peacefulness of the water and enjoyment of summers by the shore.
Did you participate in any particular sports in that area?
Well, as most kids, the family wants you to keep active, so I was a very active child, and everything from trampolining to Little League baseball to Babe Ruth baseball to running, which I did at New London High School.
Now, there's some pretty famous people from that area. I think Bruce Jenner is from.
Well, Bruce is from Newtown.
Oh, Newtown,
right? And I did see him at the Olympics in '76.
Oh, you did. So we're going to get into that part too, obviously. Yeah. I know Dave Campo, the coach for the Cowboys, is from Groton.
Right. So. John Ellis is of baseball for Yankees.
Right.
But my influence were mentors in the London area running, and John Kelly, who was a school teacher and coach at Fitch. He was kind of a mentor of mine, running and long distance and marathon running. So we had a group of us in high school that would train at the Coast Guard Academy at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd go to our respective high schools and then do a workout in the afternoon. So it was part of the camaraderie and of running. There were a number of runners that were kind of schooled in the London area, is kind of known as a running mecca, so to speak.
So you had a real interest in wanting to become a runner?
Well, I enjoyed the freeness, the activity to go out for a 10-mile run. I enjoyed not necessarily the loneliness, the long distance runner, because we did run in packs and all, but I enjoyed that aspect of the sport.
Now, you mentioned something about the 1976 Olympics. How were you able to get into that position?
Well, I was a runner through high school and through college. I started the Connecticut College cross country team because the college that I went to was women's and went co-ed. And so in '75, after running the Boston Marathon, I got tickets a year ahead of time for Montreal, which was the summer of '76. So I was there at the track stadium every day and seeing all the athletes and all that.
Now, when you ran the Boston Marathon, did you complete the marathon? Because that's a long...
every single race from a mile to 26.2 miles, when I start something, I always believe in completing it. So yes, I did.
Right. So you got to be in very good physical shape.
Well,
cardiovascular.
Cardiovascular. I was 123 pounds and probably had very little fat and used to probably eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. But I have put on some weight since that time.
Right. We're still looking pretty good shape though overall.
Well, I'm shooting for 110.
110. So. Okay. Now, you say in 1976 you went to the Olympics. Was this the summer or the winter?
In Montreal, the summer.
The summer.
But again, I bought the tickets over a year in advance. At that time, I had always had an Achilles tendonitis injury. And so I kind of stopped running in 76 competitively because the Achilles just was too painful.
Now, were you able to meet some of the famous people like Sugar Ray Leonard in that 76 Olympics to go along with Bruce Jenner? I mean, some of the people that were there at that particular year was really impressive.
Not really.
Not really.
No,
okay.
No, I just attended all the events that I could.
Now, what was it like attending the Olympics in Montreal?
Well, for someone who loved track and field and running, it was a culmination of years of either watching it on TV or participating in it. So it was a very memorable event.
Now, when it was all over, what was your next move after the 1976 Olympics?
The next move was I had just moved to Hartford. I had just graduated May 30th. From Connecticut College, and I took a summer job here in Hartford, trying to decide what I was going to do, whether I was going to stay in sales or go to higher education, whether being a psychologist, going to medical school to become a psychiatrist, or to be an osteopath. And I found that I loved the easiness of dealing with people, of sales, and the challenge of making transactions.
So your sales career was kind of your first career move more than...
Well, when I was 14 years old, as I mentioned before, there were a bunch of guys who were in high school that trained together. And the coach at the time needed someone to get the shoes.
Right.
So I was kind of delegated to order the shoes. So I ordered the shoes from a little place called Blue Ribbon Sports in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and I was in charge of collecting the money. And from that, after the first year of doing that, Jeff Johnson made me a distributor, and there were only 3 distributors in the whole state of Connecticut, and I operated out of my bedroom on Glenwood Avenue in London, and Pringles and Hatfields had a regular retail store. So there were just 3 of us that had the distributorship for Onitsuka Tiger shoes. And then subsequently, the Japanese, there were Japanese strikes between US and Japan, and it was difficult to get the shoes. And later on, Jeff Johnson, who Phil Knight considered his #1 man, he sent him up to Exeter, New Hampshire, and Jeff took over a shoe factory, and Jeff made the shoes, and Jeff called it Nike.
Okay, so we're going to obviously get into that a little bit later too.
If you like, sure.
But obviously now, as a salesperson, did you get a chance to travel, or you mostly stayed local in the?
Well, at first, because I didn't have a driver's license, my mother volunteered to take me to track meets.
Right.
So I would sell shoes out of the back of the car, similar to what Phil Knight did. But after I was 16, I did have the use of actually my late grandmother's car, and so I would go to sell shoes. But many times I just sold them through word of mouth and through teams needing shoes. So I would sell shoes like that.
Was it lucrative? Or did you find yourself starting to grow and advance in this career, or was it just kind of stagnated?
Well, I enjoyed it. It was something that was not hard to do. Most of the time, people did pay me, but at age 15, the Bristol Eastern High School coach didn't pay me, so I had to take him to small claims court. So at that age of 15, I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer, and but I liked the sales aspect, selling to Yale University, Coast Guard Academy, of course, where I ran, and Holy Cross, and many schools around the state, cross country, track, as well as individuals who I grew up with in New London that wanted a pair of running shoes or track shoes, or just wanted to be fashionable.
Did you still like to run, even though you were no longer pursuing running as a career? Did you still like to do a lot of running?
Again, I ran probably 40-50 miles a week until 76, when I just pulled my Achilles. And now I say the only time I really run is when I have to collect some money or go to court, or I'm late because I happen to be sometimes not very cognizant of time.
Right. Okay. Now, you like to watch the Olympics or running? I mean,
I enjoy it. What I really enjoy on any sports, whether it's, I haven't even watched any of the basketball. I'm hoping to watch Game 6 tonight. I like finals. I like the competitiveness of a final determination. I like to see, cut to the chase, go to the end of something. So I mean, I don't watch football at all, except I like to watch the playoffs or Super Bowl or a close game. I like to see something that has some cutting edge to it, so to speak.
Right. Mark, we're up on our first break. I'm enjoying and learning a lot about your life. We're going to come back to part 2, get into your career a little bit more in the real estate industry. Also find out a little bit about Phil Nike's right-hand man, Jeff Johnson. I'm going to get a little bit more about that. And I'm enjoying this conversation.
Great.
Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I am enjoying hosting All About You this morning with my guest, the owner of his own real estate company here in Hartford, Connecticut. He's a realtor, appraiser, broker, consultant, all rolled into one. Marc Gottesdiener. We're going to come right back shortly with part 2 of All About You. Thank you.
My name is Nyesha McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course, distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I am hosting All About You this morning with my guest. He's a realtor located here in Hartford, Connecticut, Marc Gottesdiener. We're going to continue back with part 2 of All About You. Marc, obviously you met an individual, I guess, Jeff Johnson, that I guess worked for Phil Nike. He ran the operation here on the East Coast.
Correct.
So I guess you know a lot about the early beginnings of the apparel industry of Nike.
Well, because as a runner you need shoes,
right?
It gravitated that I got into the brand which we sold, which was Onitsuka Tiger, and the brand competed against Adidas and Puma, and so the advantages of the shoe at the time was is less expensive than an Adidas or Puma shoe, which was a European shoe, and this was a Japanese shoe. So when there were dock strikes between, I think in '69 or so, when there were issues between Japan and US, which are obviously now in the forefront in our society with all the tariffs and all the trade wars and everything. Phil Knight, who owned Blue Ribbon Sports with Bill Bowerman, had to figure out a way to compete against, foreign shoes. So they also designed called the waffle shoe, and that shoe was kind of an early hybrid of what the company was trying to do was to try to be innovative. So in doing so with the strike, Phil sent Jeff up to New Hampshire to take over an old factory, and Jeff put together these shoes similar to the Onitsuka Tiger, but just a basic shoe. And so they started producing the shoes, and then he had to come up with a name, and the name he described was Nike. But by then I was already in college, and I really wasn't actively selling shoes that much.
Was it Jeff Johnson that came up with the name Nike, or Phil Nike? Jeff Johnson. Jeff. Now, what was your connections with Jeff Johnson? Well, Jeff at age 18 wanted me not to go to college, and he wanted me to move up to Wellesley, Mass, to be his number 2 guy, right? To take over, help him, sell and distribute the shoes. And that's kind of unheard of in a community in which one is expected to go to college and to do their thing. And so I passed that over, or my parents helped pass that over, so to speak. Any regrets that you passed it over? No, because while I might be up in Boston or I might be somewhere else, I was fortunate a year later after I moved here to Hartford to meet my wife, and I have 2 lovely kids, although they're on the West Coast. Right. I'm very, you can't trade that for anything. For anything, right. So eventually you would start to make the transition to moving into the real estate industry, or was that a process? As someone who was a runner, runners sometimes spiritually seek different paths, and I thought that it might be good for me to be a psychologist or psychiatrist, or at one point, because of my injuries, an osteopath. And so I toyed with that idea. And in college I took I was heavily into psychology, chemistry, biology, and so I was trying to decide which way to go with all of that. So, I mean, are you still in the sales industry now at this point? Well, I guess we're all in the sales industry every moment of our lives, Jonathan. We're always trying to look for the next situation, or at least I personally am always looking for how I can help somebody and maybe make a few dollars in an honest fashion using the golden rule. So the summer of '76, after graduating from Connecticut College, I decided to come to Hartford and agreed to work at the family's clothing store for the summer, not knowing exactly where I was going to go at that point. And I found that I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed selling suits, selling clothes. It's no different than selling shoes. And my aunt, my mother's older sister, suggested I take a real estate course. So I took in September of '76. John Ralston was an appraiser, a real estate guy, and I enjoyed at the University of Hartford the basic principles and practices that one has to take if one is going to really be a student of real estate. So from there on in, I took a two-year plan to take classes at the University of Hartford, and so I got my agent's degree in May 1st, '77, and then I pursued getting my broker's degree on May 1st, 1979, and so I've been doing this real estate gig, I guess, for 39 years now. Let me ask you one question before you get into your real estate career, because I know you're a salesperson and you had that history. Now, you came to Hartford in 1976. Right. I grew up as a child in the 70s here. The 2 apparel companies, or the 2 sneaker stores that was always the most popular, were Herb's and Salvin's. Were Herb's and Salvin's still around here in 1976? Herb's was. Herb's was, okay. Yes. Now, they were known for what? Putting out the best, in your opinion? It was just, it's like a Dick's or a Sports Authority or something that you can get any kind of sports apparel, shoes, equipment, clothing, that type of thing. So, but when I was selling Onitsuka Tiger shoes and Blue Ribbon Sports products, we had nothing but shoes. Right. So we were very specialized in just that aspect of it. So I couldn't offer a track team or a cross-country team apparel at the time. Could you be a little unbiased? And I know Nike's, you got some connections with that company. Well, I don't have any connections. You don't have no connection with Nike? Okay. I mean, my daughter worked there for a year in Portland a few years ago, but I have no connections at all. I mean, it was my past, so to speak. when you talk about top of the line sneakers, you always hear Nike, Reeboks, Adidas. What makes, in your opinion, Nike and Reebok and Adidas so special? I mean, they sell worldwide.
Well, again, as a runner, you look for cushion, protection, support. I am not an aficionado of the different styles and brands, but again, it's like a suit or like even a house. It's what attracts you to a certain brand or certain style, and or you know, or clothing or cologne or necklaces or ties or anything. So it's the comfort of what you have, the product. And so if you're comfortable with the product, it's easy to make a transaction as far as I'm concerned. So it was easy for me to sell the shoes or to promote shoes. It was easy to sell clothing. It's easy for me to promote real estate. It's all the same. If you know your product, if you know what the situation is, then you're comfortable with it, and you can recommend people what might be a choice for them to have.
Well, what sneaker do you like to wear right now? If you had to go to a store and purchase a sneaker, what's your number one sneaker?
Honestly, I don't go buy sneakers or shoes or running shoes. I mean, I have running shoes. I have different kinds of running shoes. I think I have a Brooks. I have Nike. And my daughter gave me some Nikes as samples. So so if I was to tell you that I was to just go out, I would just basically go try on a bunch of different products and see what felt good on your foot and what might be. It depends, again, if you're playing basketball, you're running, baseball, you know, or you're just walking around, that type of thing. Same thing with regular shoes.
Right.
What are going to be comfortable for you? You know, sometimes you try on a shoe and you walk around with it and it's a loafer or whatever it is, and it's not comfortable, and you don't wear it that much.
So you don't really wear sneakers then too much on the.
Not really. No, I'll wear running shoes. I guess.
Running shoes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's all different types of apparel.
All kinds of apparel. Right. Right.
Now, you mentioned your daughter lives in Los Angeles, California.
Both my kids live in LA. And my daughter was in Portland, and she still has a home there, and her fiance is from Portland, and she took a year off in between graduate school, and she was doing some freelancing for Nike, and they hired her for the summer, and then they hired her for a year, and then she went back to graduate school to get her graphic design degree in California. Have you been to Portland? I know you've been to LA, but have you been to Portland? I would visit my daughter several times, and I guess it was such a nice place that my son, who didn't like the rat race of New York, after college and during college, he went to Portland, and he was there, and then he emigrated to Los Angeles because my daughter was there. So they're both in Los Angeles. Right. Quickly before we take a break, it sounds like to me you're still an East Coast person, though. You're not really a West Coast person. My kids want us to move there, but I have holdings here in mostly Connecticut, and I love Connecticut. I still love Connecticut, even though it has its issues. Right. And it has the seasons, which California does not have. Or Portland is very dreary. Very, okay. Yes. Enjoying a lot so far when I'm talking to you, learning about your life, your different interests. We're going to come back to our last segment of All About You. Get into your career now located here in the capital city here in Hartford, and what's that's like running your real estate business. Sure. Okay. This is Jonathan Small. I am enjoying hosting All About You this morning with my guest. He has many different titles, but he owns his own real estate company located here in Connecticut, no other than Marc Gottesdiener. We're going to come right back with our last segment of All About You. Thank you.
morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I am enjoying hosting All About You, and I guess we're going to return back to our last segment here with my guest. He is the realtor here in Connecticut, Marc Gottesdiener. Let's get back with our last segment of All About You. Now, Marc, your company, I guess you are a realtor. You deal with appraising, broker, consultant. I mean, you really know the whole real estate
Well,
industry.
I've done everything except really build new. So
Right.
I've rehabbed dozens and dozens of apartment units. I've owned about 20 different properties over the years in 5 states. I act as an appraiser. I do a lot of court testimony, court appraiser. I try to solve people's real estate problems. And in doing so, I get a sense of enjoyment of doing that. And I also have a portfolio of some properties myself that I own.
So you kind of like your own boss. I mean, you set your own hours or you work on your own schedule.
Well, I am, unless I have to go to court or I have an appointment or somebody needs me in a hurry to do something. Yeah, I mean, but I'd still like to work 6.5 days a week.
Do you view yourself here locally as the Donald Trump in this town of Hartford?
Not at all. I try to call myself Hartford's real estate counselor.
Okay.
Because I try to look at everything from a perspective of what the needs are of the person that has that real estate, or it may be a problem for them, but it may not be a real problem, or they may anticipate it, or they may think because it has issues, it can be solved. So I try to look at solutions to people's real estate issues, not that. But no, as far as being a developer or big investor, I leave that to those people that want to do that type of thing. I do that on a small time basis, rehabbing property or owning property or fixing things up or moving through properties. That type of thing.
Does your work cover the whole entire state of Connecticut and other states, or just Connecticut?
Well, I've owned property in different states. I kind of focus in on Greater Hartford. I've done appraising in probably 120 of the 169 towns. I try to stay away from Fairfield County because I can't get data that's as accurate, and it's hard to sometimes communicate with other brokers or appraisers or investors down there. But I try to be open to any kind of transaction in the state of Connecticut.
So how do you see the industry right now that you're in the real estate industry? Do you see it as advancing? I mean, we had a very tough time in 2008. Are we really rebounding back to a higher level?
Well, again, it's everything, Jonathan, is location, location, location. So everything is very specific. I mean, many towns, most cities got hit pretty badly, and there's growth and there's potential, and things have gotten back to more normal, but there really is no more any real normal anymore. So it's really a matter of what the situation is on a very localized basis. I'm not saying street by street, but area by area, and there's certain areas are always going to be stronger than others, and there's always going to be issues that come up with particular cities versus the suburbs. But now that there's more of a call to be urban living, that there's more normalization, stabilization of cities.
Well, you live in a suburb of West Hartford, so you prefer the suburbs more than the city, or it doesn't really matter? You just happen to just live in a particular town.
Well, I own property in South Downtown called Soto, across the street from the Bushnell and from the state office building, a quiet little neighborhood that's going to be undergoing a lot of growth. And I lived in Frog Hollow in the 1980s. And I live in the Elmwood section of West Hartford. So as an empty nester, I don't necessarily need to be in a big colonial house, but it's very comfortable for me. But I'm in Hartford every day doing what I can do.
And right now it's just you and your wife living in your home, so your children is on the West Coast.
West Coast.
Right. Do that. So again, I mean, do you have anything else that you do outside of real estate, and any other business ventures that you?
Well, I love jazz music, so I support jazz music any way I can. But I'm pretty engrossed in what I'm doing and trying to either help my own properties, take care of my own tenants. Something like I'm going to be hosting. I used to host every year. I'm going to be hosting next month, like a little get together for my tenants.
Mhm.
So I have 24 apartments. So, you know, a little get together to show my appreciation to my tenants. But as far as extracurricular activities, I try to be spiritual in my own ways, in learning. I try to give back charity wise. I've done different calling of charities, but I'm pretty engrossed with running my own business and trying to keep things flowing in an even basis when my demands are many times on writing 30, 40, 50-page appraisal reports for court or for clients.
Let people know the name of your business again. I didn't even mention the name of
Well,
your business.
it's just basically my name, Marc Gottesdiener and Company, Inc. And I incorporated it in March 1984. So I've been in business for 32 years.
You've learned this type of business pretty much through a real estate course. I mean, how did you learn about becoming a realtor?
Well, I took the basic courses, as I said, to get an agent's license and a broker's license. And I've flown all over the country, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, New York, Boston. I go to a lot of seminars on different aspects of real estate that I've been able to try to focus on. I like to do 1031 exchanging. I was one of the first buyers brokers in the state of Connecticut when Jim Workington came to Hartford in 1981, and I learned about being a buyer's broker to represent the party I'm representing. Warren G. Harding, the grandson of the president, came to Hartford for a 6-day course on 1031 exchanging in 1981. And there's followers, I have mentors from Florida who were doing creative real estate. So I've been doing kind of creative real estate because, you know, I was in my mid-20s, moving to Hartford, had no job really, and my folks gave me the down payment. And I bought my first property with owner financing. So most of the properties I bought in Hartford in the 70s and late 70s and early 80s were because the banks weren't giving any financing. So if the owners wanted to sell and the owners saw a track record in me and they wanted a down payment, and so I was able to purchase a number of apartment buildings that way and rehab them and do that kind of thing. So that's how I kind of started in real estate, kind of practicing what I preach. So if you're going to believe in real estate, you got to own it.
Got to own it. Yes. Is real estate still one of the best ways to become wealthy? I mean, I'm just saying, you know, you could buy something and get a higher return.
Again, everybody has a different temperance and patience level. And real estate can be very frustrating because you're dependent upon financing, you're dependent upon tenants, you're dependent on municipalities. There's many aspects to it. I mean, people can, you know, make money doing stocks, they can make money doing their own business, but the benefits of real estate are far superior than any other product that there is in this world, because there's depreciation on the property, there's cash flow, there's income buildup, or income from, the debt, paying down the debt gives you equity. So, and if you live in part of the property or you have that enjoyment, you have that, which you can't get with any other thing. You can't get that with stocks. You can't get that with Persian rugs. You can't get that with art, although art's, you know, all this stuff is nice, but it's a very practical element, and people need real estate. People need to live somewhere, or people need to have their business.
Right. What's your future plans towards your career, your personal life? I mean, what you have planned for the very near future?
Well, I've owned property on Buckingham Street for 3.5 decades, a lot, and I've owned a building for 28 years, and I'm trying to develop it into some kind of mixed-use housing or something that would be good for the neighborhood, something that would be good for Hartford, something that would be different. So that is my goal that I'm trying to accomplish in the next few years.
Okay, sort of trying to give a little back. Would that be fair to say? Just trying to.
Well, I try to give back, but when people are always taking, because the real estate business is a very brutal business. I'm in court having to sue people for my fees. People don't want to pay you, even when you do them a service. So everybody's, the golden rule does not exist in real estate anymore. I used to be able to do transactions on handshakes, but you cannot do that. You have to have very specific paperwork, and still you get sued, or you have to sue to collect even with the specific paperwork. It's a very dog eat dog world, and but that's the way the world is in general. But real estate can be very brutal. You know, I've dealt with people that I've taken in from the shelter, and you get promises from the state, different agencies, that they're going to help those people as people get social and mental problems. And then those doctors and psychiatrists and social workers and all helpers, they disappear. And then you still have to evict those people, even though the state says they're going to do certain things. So it's a very difficult situation with the courts. So you have to balance all these pieces of information of how to deal. And it's hard to read people too sometimes. So I've also dealt with multimillionaires who still you have to sue them to be paid, because it's the thrill of the hunt for them to try to get as much out of you as you can. So I've seen all kinds of transactions, from selling a $10,000 building lot for a lady that her son drowned in the Farmington River and they moved away and they didn't want the lot, to an $8.2 million property that I sold to Charlie Command when he needed tax savings in 1986. So there's all these different, and I've done everything in between, as well as representing people in apartment building deficiency judgments in court, and helping people save hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even in the early 90s, I helped the city of Hartford collect about $700,000 in back taxes on a lot of downtown properties that people weren't paying their taxes on. So I went to court and had to do that. I even had to sue the Corporation Council because they didn't pay me for work I did. So, I mean, there's always a mix of all these things, and the tolerance level, how long you're going to wait for your money. I recently, a year ago, sold a shopping center in Willimantic. It only took me 6 years, but I had to be patient. The owner lived in Fairfield County and had grand ideas of the value, and I ended up selling it. But again, it's all about tolerance. And again, being a marathon man at heart, it's always in the long term. I always look at the long-term project. Just like I've been in Hartford 40 years, and now I'm seeing some renewed growth. Just like Mike Peters worked for me in the early 80s as a real estate agent. I had 25 agents working for me on Franklin Avenue, and I saw potential because Mike was a real cheerleader. And just like the Bronins care about Hartford. So it's really important to get a whole picture of everything. So I try to be optimistic. There are some days that I am pessimistic, but I try to keep a positive attitude, because there's always the next rainbow ahead.
Those are going to have to be your last words. If less quickly, something about your life that you want people to know about before we end this show, but we're just out of time. I mean, is it anything else you want to say quickly about your life, or are you satisfied with what we talked about?
This was enjoyable, and you know, I just remit like the words I have on the back of my car from Sun Ra: space is the place.
Okay. Those words are well taken. I had learned a lot about your life. Sound like you're a very interesting, down-to-earth person, and I see a lot of good things happening to you in a very tough, cutthroat business, but you seem to know how to hang in there and keep on thriving. And it was a pleasure to have you on All About You this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had just enjoyed hosting an edition of All About You this morning. What my guests, a realtor, broker, appraiser, consultant of his own company, Marc Gottesdiener, and it was a pleasure having him on this show. And hopefully you were able to learn something about his life. We're gonna run into our 2 weeks producers break. So this is the last show that I'll be doing here for June until July, unless something, a major breaking story comes up, and you might end up seeing me doing a special. But if not, we'll be moving back into our July schedule, and there's a lot of good programs you could always tune into on accesstv.org network. And until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.